Catapult and Trebuchet history rundown. The first ever recorded catapult was made by ancient China, which was used by the Mongols, used by Mohists, Chinese philosophers and logicians, who would teach sciences to the people around them. It was found in depictions in the Mojing in 470 BC to 391 BC. Other early versions of the catapult date back to ancient Greeks, forming a catapult that showed signs of a crossbow-inspired engineering, similar to the ballista. It would look somewhat like this. How the ballista would work would be similar to a catapult, but also similar to a crossbow. So, obviously, how crossbows work is that you pull down the string and then you input your item into this area right here once you pull back the string. Oops. Go back. And it would fire. It is just like a crossbow, basically, but not quite there, obviously, because it is not mobile, and it needs more manpower to operate it. The other recorded catapult was during the Roman Empire, reign of Philip II of Macedonia, 350 BC. It showed a different version of a catapult being formatted, it having properties of the classic catapult, which was this right here, one we all know today, which has a lot of fame to it. Catapults were commonly used during the medieval period, and it continued to be used until early after it. During the medieval period, they would use it for flinging debris out of their kingdom, or obviously for battle. A big mistake that they used was during the bubonic and black plague. They would fling their dead animals and carcasses of people that they did not wish to burn to other places to get rid of them, like their enemies. You throw their trash to their enemies, they're like, oh, hey, it's taken care of. We don't have to use this anymore. Unfortunately, what they have done was spread the plague more in Europe. Bubonic plague at the time was very hard to treat, obviously. Many people died, and because of this very, very poor judgment on getting rid of your problems, using the catapult, it just spread and became a more widespread issue. On these catapults, they would also fling rats, and flinging rats would also increase the bubonic plague, obviously, because the fleas on the rats would transfer to other rats in the area, and it just was a vicious cycle. After the medieval period, they began to use trebuchets. We'll get to that later. But as they began to use trebuchets, they kind of went a little bit backwards as catapults became more famous. They were the ones that were more recognized because of their simplicity. You know, you describe a catapult to a child, it's going to make sense. So, what you do with a catapult is that you put your item right here. All you do is set it back and it flings. This right here could be a metal bar or a wooden bar, and it stops the catapult from going all the way down. As it just stopped, the energy harvest in here being pulled back and the spring being pushed forward allows the energy to transfer over. Think of it as you in the car, and when the car stops abruptly, when you're already going 70 miles, 70 on the highway. Sorry. Now that sudden burst will have the energy still in you, and you will still be flung toward the front of the car. That is similar to the catapult. Now, moving on to the trebuchet. The trebuchet was an early siege weapon, and you guessed it, was made by the Chinese. Ancient Chinese used this as another war weapon. It was a massive weapon. And as it was inspired, it inspired the European group. Europe began to use it as well. The trebuchet evolved into the counterweight, precisely around this time. Oh, also, this is the trench warfare trench warfare catapult that people that were in the trenches would use. It was easy to use. It also has crossbow-like features. And the crossbow-like features were most like a slingshot, which a slingshot is very similar to a catapult, which is what most catapults are used today are simplified areas like that. You know, you can go to the store and buy a slingshot, and basically you have a catapult in some way or another. Anyways, back to the trebuchet. Trebuchet evolved into a counterweight. The counterweight looked something similar to this. This was the earliest trebuchet that was recorded. One of the earliest. This is a trebuchet, a counterweight trebuchet. So, this has like a very massive load on this area right here. Could be a rock, could be logs, anything that could fit in this area right here. This is the projectile, and this is a sling. As this is lifted down, the beam goes up, and it flings the item. As long as the frame can support it, it will. I'll go ahead and, you know, sorry, I'm not good at explaining. But it will stay. If it does not have an equal force, or a force that's over this force right here, say this is rocks and we have a little bit more heavier rocks, it will not exactly go as quite well, because if there's not some imbalance in this, then it just won't work. So once the item is released, the trebuchet goes upward, and this right here stays right here until you put another item in. The counterweight was used very often. It was a evolved version of the classic trebuchet. The classic trebuchet had some faults. So did the counterweight, unlike catapults. During the siege, oh, by the way, early catapults were around 130. No, wait. Hang on. Sorry. I wrote all this down. Okay, so catapults were commonly used after and before medieval period, but were used more after the medieval period. During 1304, during the siege of Stirling Castle, Edward I of England instructed his people to build a trebuchet called the Warwolf. The Guillaume, that's how they say it, or something. I don't know how you say that. This is the largest trebuchet ever built, it being 300 to 400 feet in length, not length, but height. It could hold stones as much as 300 pounds. It's, he had a, he built this over a long course of time, and as his enemies saw this massive item being built right before them in their castle's area, they thought, whoa, this is whack, dude. So they came out and they showed their white flags and say, hey, we don't want to fight anymore. This is pretty, we don't like this. We surrender. You win. But King Edward, being him, he was like, no, we built this for like months, okay, buddy? So we're just gonna test it out, alright? Don't worry. So he tested it out, and it left a huge mark in their castle. And after that, he accepted their plea. Of course, you're not gonna just let somebody say, "Oh, whoa, you did all this hard work. We don't want to see it. Okay, we don't want to see it." So Edward wasn't having it. The trebuchet and the catapult, unfortunately, saw their downfall as the gunpowder and cannons were used more often. They were more convenient. They weren't taking up as much people. All right, you could either have 5 cannons, or you can have one giant trebuchet that took like 5 people to use, or you could have 5 people on each cannon. It's very obvious which one you're going to choose. So this is one of the earliest cannons that was used, and as guns progressed and gunpowder was used more, the catapult and trebuchet saw their downfall, unfortunately. The cannon being the most closest to the catapult, I would say would align very well with them. Catapult, trebuchet, and then cannon. It's very obvious that they would go for this, but just like the trebuchet and the catapult, cannons declined and gunpowder and guns rose because they were also super convenient. Almost everyone can carry a gun, be it small, be it large. I mean, you can have a pen gun. It's that convenient, and we don't really live in castles anymore, so we don't really need to fling giant stones. So, that was the rundown of the trebuchet and catapult. I'm very sorry if this was kind of odd, and it's 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. I spent like 30 minutes trying to describe this, but I kept failing. So I hope this is sufficient. I hope this goes a rundown. I hope I explained them well, the best I could. I hope this is good. I really do. Alright, bye.